Have you ever seen a child surrounded by everything money can buy, yet completely alone? 11-year-old Madison Pierce sat in her mansion's playroom with 100 expensive toys, but no one to play with. Her tech billionaire father could purchase anything except the one thing she desperately needed: a real friend. Contrary to what child development experts believed, it wasn't social skills training or arranged playdates that taught Madison about friendship. It was a 50-year-old black gardener named Violet who showed her that the best relationships grow from the ground up, just like her beloved flowers. I've studied hundreds of cases involving socially isolated children, and this story reveals something extraordinary about authentic human connection. By the end of this story, you'll understand how one woman's simple garden lessons became the foundation for lifelong friendships that money could never buy. Madison went from having zero genuine connections to becoming the most beloved student in her school, all because someone taught her that friendship, like flowers, requires patience, care, and genuine nurturing to bloom. This proves that the most valuable life lessons don't come from expensive courses. They come from people who understand what it means to grow something beautiful from scratch. The Pierce estate sprawled across 15 acres of Silicon Valley's most exclusive real estate, its glass and steel mansion rising like a monument to technological success. Inside, 11-year-old Madison Pierce sat alone in her custom playroom, surrounded by toys that could fund a small school, yet feeling emptier than any child should ever feel. Thomas Pierce, 42 years old and worth $3.2 billion from his social media empire, watched his daughter through the security monitors in his home office. Madison sat motionless among her expensive possessions: a custom dollhouse worth $15,000, an arcade room with every game imaginable, a private movie theater that seated 20. None of it mattered. She was utterly devastatingly alone. "Daddy, why don't kids want to be my friend?" Madison had asked during their last family dinner, her voice echoing in the marble dining room designed to seat 20 guests but occupied by only 2. Thomas had no answer. Despite all his success creating platforms that connected billions of people worldwide, he couldn't help his own daughter form a single genuine connection. Madison's isolation wasn't new. It had been building since kindergarten at the exclusive Hillside Academy. Her classmates came from wealthy families, but even among Silicon Valley elite, the Pierce fortune stood out uncomfortably. Madison's attempts at friendship invariably backfired in ways that broke Thomas's heart to witness. At her last birthday party, Madison had arrived in the family's Bentley, while other children came in luxury SUVs. The difference seemed small to adults, but to 11-year-olds, it represented an unbridgeable gap. Only 2 children attended both, leaving early when they felt overwhelmed by the mansion's grandeur. When Madison tried to give expensive gifts to classmates, teachers whispered about inappropriate displays of wealth. When she invited friends to pool parties, children felt out of place in the Olympic-sized facility with its waterfall features and private cabanas. When she offered to pay for group activities, parents complained she was teaching their children to expect handouts. The most painful incident occurred during a recent school field trip. Madison had enthusiastically suggested the class visit the new science museum, then casually mentioned her family could sponsor the trip for everyone. What she intended as generosity came across as showing off. Other parents complained to the principal about the Pierce family flaunting their wealth and making other children feel inferior. Thomas had responded by hiring the best experts money could buy. Dr. Patricia Langley, the area's most renowned child social development specialist, charged $800 per session to teach Madison appropriate peer interaction. Over 12 sessions, Dr. Langley used role-playing exercises, social scripts, and conversation starters to help Madison connect with classmates. The results were disastrous. Madison memorized Dr. Langley's techniques perfectly, but sounded like a small robot when speaking to other children. Her scripted interactions felt artificial and rehearsed, pushing potential friends further away. "She lacks authentic emotional intelligence," Dr. Langley explained after Madison's latest failed attempt at playground conversation. Her wealth has insulated her from normal social development. Jennifer Walsh, a $1,200 per week social coach, took a different approach. She arranged playdates with children from similar economic backgrounds, supervised every interaction, and provided structured friendship-building activities. The children were polite, but distant, treating Madison with the careful courtesy reserved for adults, rather than the casual warmth of genuine friendship. "They're nice to me because they have to be," Madison observed after another awkward playdate. "But they don't actually like me." Camp Connections, an elite $5,000 per week summer program for socially gifted children, promised to teach networking skills and group dynamics. Madison spent 6 weeks learning leadership techniques and social hierarchies, returning home more isolated than ever. "It felt like a business meeting for kids," she told Thomas. Everyone was performing friendship instead of being friends. In 18 months, Thomas had spent $35,000 on social development experts. Madison had grown quieter, more withdrawn, and increasingly convinced that something was fundamentally wrong with her. She began eating meals alone in her room, avoiding family dinners, where Thomas's concerned questions reminded her of her failures. The mansion staff noticed the change. Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper, whispered to other employees about the sad little girl who has everything but nothing. Madison's tutors reported declining engagement and enthusiasm. Even her beloved horse Prince couldn't lift her spirits during their daily rides around the estate's private trails. Thomas felt helpless watching his daughter retreat into herself. His business empire was built on understanding human connection and social networks, yet he couldn't help his own child make a single friend. Every solution he purchased seemed to make the problem worse. The Pierce family's tragedy wasn't poverty or illness. It was the peculiar isolation that comes from having so much that others can't relate to your struggles. Madison wasn't just lonely. She was learning to believe that genuine connection was impossible for someone like her. That's when Violet Johnson arrived to transform their perfectly manicured world. Violet was 50 years old, originally from rural Alabama, with 25 years of professional landscaping experience. After her daughter's death in a car accident, she had moved to California to help raise her 3 grandchildren, seeking steady work with good benefits to support her new responsibilities. The Pierce estate needed someone to manage their extensive gardens and grounds. Previous landscaping services had focused on impressive displays designed to impress visitors, sculpted topiaries, exotic plants, elaborate water features that looked beautiful but felt cold and artificial. Violet specialized in organic flower gardens and vegetable patches, believing that the most beautiful spaces were those where life flourished naturally. She arrived on a Monday morning with her simple tools and a philosophy that would soon challenge everything the Pierce family thought they knew about growth and connection. On her first day, Violet noticed the lonely girl watching from an upstairs window, her small face pressed against the glass as she observed this new person who worked with her hands and seemed to find joy in simple tasks. "Just focus on the landscaping," Thomas had instructed during their brief orientation meeting. "Madison doesn't need interaction with staff." But Violet had raised children and grandchildren. She understood that sometimes the most important growth happens not in planned gardens, but in the unexpected spaces where authentic connection takes root. During Violet's first week, she established a quiet routine that respected the Pierce family's boundaries while doing what she loved most, helping things grow. She worked primarily in the areas behind the garage, away from the main landscape gardens that guests would see, creating a small, intimate space where she could plant flowers that brought her joy rather than impress visitors. Madison observed from various windows throughout the mansion, fascinated by someone who seemed genuinely content working alone. Unlike the household staff who moved efficiently through their duties, Violet hummed old folk songs while she worked, talking softly to the plants as she tended them. "Grow strong now, little sunflower," Violet would say while watering seedlings. "You got everything you need right here in this good soil." Madison had never seen an adult speak so gently to anything, much less plants. Her tutors spoke with professional efficiency, her father communicated in business terms, and the household staff maintained polite distance. But Violet's voice carried warmth, that seemed to make the flowers respond by standing straighter in their beds. From her bedroom window, Madison could see Violet creating what looked like a secret garden. Simple clay pots arranged on wooden tables, bright marigolds, and cheerful sunflowers that seemed to grow more vibrant each day under her care. On her 8th day of observation, Madison's curiosity overcame her shyness. She ventured outside for the first time in weeks, standing at a safe distance while Violet planted a new row of lavender seedlings. "Why do you talk to flowers?" Madison asked, her voice barely audible. Violet looked up from her work, not at all surprised to see the child she had sensed watching her all week. Her smile was warm, but not overwhelming, the kind of expression that invited conversation without demanding it. "Same reason people talk to friends," Violet replied simply. "Makes them feel loved and helps them grow better." Madison considered this seriously. Do flowers really listen? Everything listens when you speak from your heart, child. Plants, animals, people, they all know the difference between real caring and just going through motions. This concept intrigued Madison more than any expensive toy or educational program ever had. She moved slightly closer, drawn by the idea that caring could be genuine rather than performed. During the 2nd week, Madison began approaching Violet's work area regularly, always maintaining careful distance but staying longer each day. Violet acknowledged her presence without pressuring interaction, continuing her work, while occasionally sharing observations about the plants or the weather. "You can come closer if you want," Violet finally offered when Madison had been standing 10 feet away for nearly an hour. Madison approached cautiously. "My dad says I shouldn't bother the staff." Violet's hands paused in their work. "Well, I'm not staff, honey. I'm a gardener. There's a big difference." "What's the difference?" "Staff serve people. Gardeners serve life. We help things grow that want to grow, and we learn from watching how nature works best." This distinction fascinated Madison, who had never considered that adults might have different relationships with their work. Everyone in her world seemed to exist primarily to serve her family's needs or business interests. "Want to see something special?" Violet asked, leading Madison to a collection of small pots containing tiny seedlings. "What are they?" "Friendship flowers," Violet said with mock seriousness that made Madison giggle for the first time in months. "They only bloom when they got good company and patient care." Madison examined the delicate sprouts with the intensity of a scientist. "I don't know anything about flowers." "That's perfectly fine. Flowers don't know anything about people either, but they still manage to grow together in gardens. The secret is paying attention to what each one needs and giving it time to develop naturally." This simple philosophy represented everything Madison's expensive social coaching had missed. Instead of scripts and strategies, Violet offered the radical idea that relationships might grow organically when approached with genuine care and patience. By the 3rd week, Madison was asking if she could help with watering. Violet taught her proper technique, gentle and steady pressure, watching for signs that plants had received enough without drowning them. "Too much water kills plants, just like too little," Violet explained. "The trick is learning to pay attention and respond to what you observe." Madison applied this lesson literally, studying each plant's response to her care. "The roses look sad today," she announced during one watering session. "What makes you think that?" Violet asked. "Their leaves are droopy like when I feel sad." Violet's heart nearly broke at this innocent observation. Here was a child so familiar with sadness that she recognized it in plants. You're learning to see with your heart instead of just your eyes. That's the first step to understanding any living thing. Madison looked up from the roses. "I'm not very good at making friends." "Says who?" "Everyone. Kids at school think I'm weird because we're rich. The social coaches say I lack emotional intelligence. My dad hired specialists to fix me, but nothing works." Violet set down her watering can and looked directly at Madison. "Being different isn't the problem, honey. Trying to hide who you are, that's what makes connection impossible." "But what if who I am isn't enough? Child yourself is all you got to offer anyone. And if that's not enough for somebody, then they're not your people anyway." This conversation marked a turning point in Madison's self-perception. For the first time, an adult had suggested that her authentic self might be valuable rather than something that needed fixing. During the 4th week, Violet suggested Madison plant her own small garden in a corner spot behind her bedroom window. Every friendship needs its own space to grow, she explained. What should I plant? Madison asked eagerly. What kind of friends do you want to have? Madison thought carefully, applying this metaphorical thinking that felt more natural than any social script she had memorized. Kind ones, loyal ones, fun ones who like to laugh. Then we plant marigolds for loyalty, sunflowers for joy, and lavender for peace and kindness, Violet decided. Working side by side in the soil, Madison opened up about her school loneliness in ways she had never shared with expensive therapists. Kids are nice to me, but it feels fake, like they're scared of saying the wrong thing and making my family angry. Violet nodded, understanding. Rich folks can be intimidating without meaning to be. Maybe those children are scared, not mean. But I don't want to be intimidating. I just want someone to like spending time with me. Then don't be intimidating. Be Madison, not Thomas Pierce's money. What if Madison isn't interesting enough? Violet's voice grew firm with conviction. Honey, I've been watching you for a month. You're curious, you're gentle with living things, you ask thoughtful questions, and you're braver than you know. Any child would be lucky to have you as a friend. Madison had never heard such specific, genuine praise about her character rather than her achievements or possessions. For the first time in her life, she began to believe that friendship might be possible. How do I find kids who might like the real me? Madison asked. Same way you find good soil for planting. You test it gentle-like and see what grows. Madison's opportunity to test Violet's friendship wisdom came sooner than expected. At school, she was assigned a partner for a science project on plant growth. A quiet girl named Emma Chen, from a middle-class family who had always seemed intimidated by Madison's wealth and status. Instead of suggesting they work at the Pierce mansion, Madison applied Violet's lesson about paying attention to what others might need. She noticed Emma's nervousness and suggested meeting at Emma's house instead. Emma's small apartment was a revelation for Madison. She had never experienced a home where 3 people shared 2 bedrooms, where dinner was cooked fresh each evening instead of prepared by private chefs, where family members gathered naturally in the living room to share their day. Madison was fascinated by the warmth that filled the modest space. Emma's mother asking about school while chopping vegetables. Emma's younger sister practicing piano in the corner, the easy affection that flowed between family members who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Applying Violet's gardening lessons, Madison focused on listening to what Emma actually needed rather than trying to impress her. When Emma struggled with math homework while they worked on their plant project, Madison offered help without mentioning her expensive tutors. I'm pretty good with numbers, she said simply. Want me to show you some tricks my math teacher taught me? Emma was surprised by Madison's genuine helpfulness and lack of condescension. As they worked together, Madison shared Violet's insights about plant growth with such enthusiasm that Emma began asking questions about gardening. Your family seems really happy, Madison observed during dinner, which consisted of homemade soup and bread that tasted better than anything from the Pierce family's gourmet kitchen. We don't have much money, Emma replied, but we have each other. Mom says that's what matters most. That sounds better than having money but eating dinner alone every night, Madison said wistfully. This authentic vulnerability created the first genuine connection Madison had ever experienced with a peer. Emma's initial intimidation melted away as she realized Madison wasn't showing off or trying to prove her superiority, she was simply being herself. However, their growing friendship faced immediate opposition when Thomas discovered Madison spending time with the gardener's influence and inappropriate social connections. The Chen family is not our social level, Thomas told Madison during a tense family meeting. You need connections that will benefit your future, not friendships with families who might take advantage of your generosity. Madison's newfound confidence, cultivated through weeks of Violet's patient encouragement, gave her courage to defend her friendship. Emma doesn't want anything from me except to be friends. She's the first person who likes spending time with me instead of being scared of disappointing my family. Thomas threatened to forbid the friendship entirely. Real friends come from appropriate backgrounds. This Emma girl will only hold you back socially. That evening, Madison sought Violet's advice in their garden sanctuary. Daddy says Emma's not the right kind of friend for me because her family doesn't have money. Violet continued her weeding while considering her response carefully. What do you think about Emma as a friend? She makes me feel like myself instead of like Thomas Pierce's daughter. She doesn't care about our money. She just likes spending time with me and learning about gardening. Sounds like you already know what kind of friend she is, Violet observed. But Daddy will be angry if I disobey him. Violet's voice grew gentle but firm. Sometimes doing the right thing makes people angry. The question you got to ask yourself is, what kind of person do you want to be? Someone who chooses friends based on their bank account, or someone who chooses them based on their character? This conversation forced Madison to confront the defining choice of her young life. The next day at school, when wealthy classmates excluded Emma from their lunch table because she didn't belong, Madison faced her moment of truth. Without hesitation, Madison gathered her lunch and left the elite table to sit with Emma, who was eating alone in the corner. I'd rather eat lunch with one real friend than a table full of fake ones, she announced loud enough for everyone to hear. Won't your dad be mad? Emma whispered. Maybe, Madison replied with newfound conviction, but some things are worth being brave for. Other students noticed Madison's loyalty and authentic kindness. Gradually, children who had been intimidated by her wealth began approaching their table, drawn by the genuine warmth that radiated from Madison's friendship with Emma. Madison applied Violet's gardening wisdom to each new potential friendship. She paid attention to what others needed, offered help without expecting recognition, and nurtured connections with patience, rather than trying to force immediate results. Within weeks, the social dynamics at Hillside Academy shifted dramatically. Madison became known not as the intimidating rich girl, but as the student who welcomed newcomers, stood up for kids being bullied, and treated everyone with equal respect, regardless of their family's economic status. Her transformation was so remarkable that the school counselor called Thomas to report that Madison had become their most inclusive student leader. She's the one who makes new students feel welcome and creates opportunities for children from different backgrounds to connect, the counselor explained. Thomas watched his daughter's confidence soar as she developed genuine friendships based on character rather than wealth. For the first time in her life, Madison was truly happy, not because she had everything money could buy, but because she had learned something money couldn't purchase: how to be a real friend. The lesson Violet had taught through simple gardening wisdom had transformed not just Madison's social life, but her understanding of what made relationships flourish and bloom. 6 months later, Madison's 11th birthday party looked nothing like the elaborate, empty celebrations of previous years. Instead of hiring expensive entertainment for an audience of uncomfortable children, Madison hosted a casual garden party where kids from all social backgrounds played together naturally. The celebration took place in the garden space Violet had helped Madison create, with picnic tables instead of formal dining, homemade decorations crafted by Madison and her friends, and activities centered around the flowers they had planted together. Children who had never met before connected over their shared interest in Madison's gardening lessons. Emma had become Madison's best friend and constant companion, spending weekends at the Pierce mansion, where she now felt completely welcome. Their friendship had opened doors to a diverse group of children who appreciated Madison's authentic kindness rather than being intimidated by her family's wealth. Thomas watched his daughter's transformation with amazement and gratitude. Madison's confidence had soared. Her grades improved dramatically, and her natural leadership abilities emerged as she organized inclusive activities that brought children together across social boundaries. Violet had been officially promoted to head of grounds, with a title that reflected her true contribution to the Pierce family. More importantly, she had become an honorary grandmother figure to Madison, teaching life lessons that no amount of money could have purchased. Madison's success inspired changes throughout Hillside Academy. She started a school garden where younger students learned about friendship through plant care sharing, Violet's wisdom about patience nurturing, and paying attention to what others need to flourish. The birthday party's most touching moment came when Madison presented Violet with a special gift, a photo album documenting their garden's growth alongside pictures of all the friendships that had bloomed from the lessons learned among the flowers. You taught me that the most beautiful things grow slowly with patience and genuine care, Madison told Violet in front of all her friends. Thank you for showing me how to be a real friend. Thomas had learned his own valuable lessons about authentic connection. He reduced his work hours to spend time with Madison, finally understanding that presence mattered more than providing expensive solutions to emotional problems. If Madison's story reminded you that the most beautiful friendships grow from authentic soil, not artificial arrangements, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Every week I share stories about how genuine human connections bloom when we stop trying to impress and start trying to understand. Which moment resonated with you most, when Madison chose loyalty to Emma over social status, or when she realized her garden lessons applied to friendship? Share in the comments below. Sometimes the most valuable lessons about love don't come from social coaches. They come from someone who knows that the best things in life grow slowly with patience, care, and authentic nurturing.